The galaxy was on the brink of war, and the fate of two species hung in the balance. Captain David Solis stared out of the window of his command ship, the Apollo, watching the cold, distant stars flicker like dying embers. The quiet hum of the engines was the only sound, a constant reminder of the responsibility that weighed heavily on his shoulders. He had been chosen for this mission because of his reputation as a soldier, a man who never hesitated, never questioned orders. The United Earth Federation had been fighting the Zaltar Empire for years. The Zaltar, once a powerful and respected species, had turned to brutality and conquest under their queen, Ilakira. It had been a bloody war, with countless lives lost on both sides. But now, the Zaltar were nearly defeated. The Federation fleet had cornered them on their last stronghold, a barren world on the edge of the galaxy. Ilakira was known as a ruthless and calculating leader, her intelligence and cunning making her a formidable foe. For years, her empire had spread terror across the stars, and her forces had destroyed countless colonies. But now, her empire was crumbling. Her ships were scattered and her forces were in disarray. The time had come for the Federation to strike the final blow. David's orders were clear: eliminate the Queen. No exceptions. The Federation's high command had made it clear that Ilakira's survival meant the continuation of the war and the destruction of countless more lives. There would be no mercy. As David stood on the bridge of the Apollo, his thoughts were interrupted by the voice of his communications officer. "Captain Solis, we've received a transmission from the Zaltar fortress. It's from Ilakira herself." David frowned. "What does she want?" The officer hesitated for a moment. "She says she wants to surrender. She's offering a deal." David's mind raced. This was unexpected. Ilakira was known for her arrogance, her unshakable belief that she could conquer anything. The idea that she would surrender was hard to believe, but he knew he couldn't ignore it. "Put it through," David said. A holographic image of Ilakira appeared in front of him, her towering figure radiating an aura of power. She was beautiful in an otherworldly way, with sleek, silver skin and piercing blue eyes that seemed to see straight through him. Her expression was calm, almost serene, but there was a coldness in her gaze that made David's skin crawl. "You've won, Captain Solis," Ilakira said, her voice smooth and deliberate. "The Zaltar Empire is no more. My forces have been shattered and I am surrounded, but before you destroy me, I offer you a choice." David raised an eyebrow. "A choice?" "Yes," she replied. "I offer you knowledge. The knowledge of a threat far greater than the Zaltar. A threat that will destroy not just your species, but every species in this galaxy. If you kill me now, that knowledge dies with me. But if you spare me, I will give you the means to destroy this new enemy before it's too late." David's mind raced. He had been trained to destroy the enemy, to follow orders without question, but this was different. The Federation had already lost so many lives fighting the Zaltar. Could there really be a greater threat out there? And if there was Ilakira the one to stop it? "Why should I trust you?" David asked, his voice steady but full of doubt. "Because I know what it is like to lose everything," Ilakira said, her tone softening for a moment. "I was once a ruler who sought peace. My people were protectors of the galaxy, but I lost my way. I allowed my thirst for power to consume me, and now I see what I have done. I can't undo the damage I've caused, but I can help you stop what's coming." David felt a stir of something. Was it pity? No, it couldn't be. This was the alien queen who had caused untold suffering across the galaxy, and yet something about her words made him hesitate. He thought about the millions of lives that had been lost in the war. He thought about the civilians who had been caught in the crossfire, the families who had been torn apart by the Zaltar's brutal conquests. Could he really allow her to live? Could he trust her? Or was this just another manipulation? Before he could make up his mind, the voice of his first officer, Lieutenant Kara Donovan, interrupted his thoughts. "Captain, we've received new orders from High Command. They've ordered us to proceed with the mission. We are to eliminate Ilakira immediately. David closed his eyes for a moment, weighing the situation. His orders were clear, but the offer that Ilakira had made was something he couldn't ignore. He had spent his life following orders, never questioning the cause. But this time something felt different. He turned back to the hologram of Ilakira. "I'll give you one chance. If what you say is true, then you'll prove it. If you're lying, I will destroy you without hesitation." Ilakira's lips curled into a slight smile. "I understand, Captain, but I warn you, time is running out. The enemy is already gathering, and we are their only hope." David took a deep breath. He knew he had made a dangerous choice. But there was something about Ilakira's calmness, her certainty, that made him wonder if she was telling the truth. If she was, then they might all be facing an enemy far worse than the Zaltar. "Prepare the team," David ordered, his voice firm. "We're going to the fortress. I'll decide what to do once we have the facts." The Apollo slowly descended through the atmosphere of the desolate planet. Its hull trembled slightly as it cut through the thin air, but the crew aboard had grown used to the steady hum of the ship, the constant reminder of their mission. David stood at the front of the bridge, eyes fixed on the planet below. His thoughts were a whirlwind. Could Ilakira truly be telling the truth? Was there really a threat out there greater than the Zaltar Empire? And if there was, could he afford to trust the queen who had caused so much destruction? Lieutenant Cara Donovan, his first officer, stood beside him, her arms crossed. She watched David, sensing the conflict that weighed on him. "You're not convinced, are you?" she asked quietly. David didn't answer immediately. He was used to making decisions in the heat of battle, but this was different. This wasn't about defeating an enemy. This was about choosing whether or not to trust one. And the consequences of that choice could affect the fate of the entire galaxy. "I don't know what to believe, Kara," David admitted, his voice low. "It doesn't make sense. Ilakira was a tyrant. She led the Zaltar to war against us. Why would she suddenly turn around and offer to help us?" Kara didn't respond right away, instead turning her gaze back to the planet below. "Maybe she's telling the truth, or maybe she's playing us. Either way, we can't ignore the possibility that she's right. If there's an enemy out there even worse than the Zaltar, we need to prepare for it." David nodded slowly. "We'll see, but I'm not going to let my guard down." The ship touched down with a soft thud, and the crew began to prepare for their mission. David couldn't help but feel the weight of what they were about to do. He had been trained for moments like this, to face impossible situations and make decisions that others couldn't. But this was different. This wasn't just a battle. This was a chance to change everything, and he wasn't sure if he was ready for it. As the team assembled in the ship's hangar bay, David reviewed the mission details one last time. They were to land near the Zaltar fortress and make contact with Ilakira. The Federation had given him the authority to make the final call, but they were clear. If Ilakira tried anything, they were to take her down immediately. There was no room for error. Kara approached him, her face serious. "We're ready, Captain. The team's all set." David turned to face her, trying to shake off his doubts. "Let's move out." The team, a mix of human soldiers and Zaltar dissidents who had chosen to fight for the Federation, made their way to the planet's surface. The Zaltar fortress loomed in the distance, a dark and imposing structure that stood as a symbol of the Empire's once great power. Now it looked like a relic of a lost age, abandoned and crumbling. As they approached, David couldn't help but feel the weight of history pressing down on him. This was where it had all begun. The rise of the Zaltar Empire, the brutal wars, the countless lives lost. And now, he was standing on the edge of something that could change everything. He wasn't sure what to expect from Ilakira, but he knew that whatever happened next, it would set the course for the galaxy's future. They reached the gates of the fortress, and David gave the signal to halt. The doors opened slowly, revealing the queen herself, standing at the threshold. Ilakira's presence was overwhelming as always. Even now, in defeat, she carried herself with the same regal air she had when she commanded the might of the Zaltar Empire. "Captain Solis," she greeted him, her voice cool but respectful. "I knew you would come." David didn't reply at first. He studied her carefully, searching for any sign of deception. She looked different now, no longer the proud conqueror but a fallen leader who had lost everything. Her once vibrant skin had dulled, and her eyes, though still sharp, lacked the coldness they had once held. For the first time she seemed vulnerable. "Are you ready to explain?" David asked, his voice steady. Ilakira nodded, stepping aside to allow them entry into the fortress. "I am, but there is much to discuss. Please come inside." The team entered the fortress, and Ilakira led them through its dark, empty halls. The once magnificent structure now felt like a tomb, its walls echoing with silence. David couldn't help but wonder how many lives had been lost within these walls, how many battles had been fought for control of this place. Finally, they reached a large chamber at the heart of the fortress. In the center of the room stood a massive holographic display, showing a map of the galaxy. Ilakira activated it with a wave of her hand, and the map zoomed in on a distant sector, far beyond the reach of the Federation. "This," Ilakira said, "is where the Syrax horde is gathering." David leaned in, studying the display. The Syrax were a name whispered in fear across the galaxy, an ancient race of conquerors whose origins were shrouded in mystery. They were known for their advanced technology and ruthless tactics, and they had been silent for centuries. Now, according to Ilakira, they were preparing for something far worse than anything the Federation had faced before. "I don't understand," David said, shaking his head. "Why would you help us? You who have caused so much destruction already." Ilakira's eyes softened, and for a moment she seemed almost human. "I was once a protector of peace. My people were guardians of the galaxy, but we were corrupted. I lost my way, and in doing so I lost everything. Now I see what is coming. The Syrax are not like the Zaltar. They will destroy everything in their path without mercy. They will not stop until all life is wiped out." David looked at the map again, his mind racing. "How do we stop them?" "That is why I need you," Ilakira replied. "The Syrax are too powerful for a direct confrontation, but I know their weaknesses and I can help you infiltrate their forces. Together, we can destroy them from within." David hesitated. Could he really trust her? After everything she had done, could she truly be an ally now? The answer wasn't clear, but there was no time to waste. The threat was real and he had to make a choice. "All right," David said at last. "We'll work together. But if you betray us, I will not hesitate to end this." Ilakira nodded, a flicker of something like respect in her eyes. "I understand, Captain, and I swear I will not betray you. This is the only chance we have." David took a deep breath, his mind made up. He didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain. The galaxy was facing a danger unlike anything they had ever known, and the only way to survive was to put their trust in an enemy who had once been the greatest threat of all. The journey to the Syrax sector was long and filled with tension. The crew of the Apollo remained on high alert, eyes scanning the stars for any sign of the enemy. David Solis couldn't help but feel the weight of the decision he had made. Trusting Ilakira, trusting an alien who had been responsible for the deaths of countless innocent lives, was a gamble. But as the days passed, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time. If the Syrax were truly as dangerous as Ilakira claimed, then every moment spent doubting her could mean the difference between life and death. Ilakira had remained a quiet presence throughout the journey, her demeanor calm, almost detached. At first, David had wondered if she was just waiting for the right moment to betray them. But over time, he began to notice something different. She seemed genuinely focused on the mission, even going so far as to offer tactical advice on how to deal with the Syrax. She had helped them understand their enemies' movements, their weaknesses, and even their battle tactics. David wasn't sure if he could fully trust her, but he couldn't ignore the value of her knowledge. She had been a queen, after all. She had led an empire. She knew things that no one else did. And right now, those things might be the only hope they had. As the Apollo entered the outer reaches of the Syrax sector, the crew's tension only increased. Cara Donovan, the first officer, stood beside David on the bridge. Her face was set in a grim expression, but she didn't say anything. There was nothing to say. They were all feeling the pressure. "Captain," Ilakira's voice came over the comms, "we are approaching their stronghold. I suggest we prepare for the next phase of our plan." David glanced at Kara, then nodded. "You heard her. Get the team ready. It's time." The team assembled in the briefing room where Ilakira outlined the next steps. They had to infiltrate the Syrax mothership, a massive, blackened structure that hovered ominously in the center of a dense asteroid field. Getting close enough to board would be nearly impossible without being detected, but Ilakira had a plan. "You'll need to take out their perimeter defenses first," Ilakira explained, her tone cool and calculated. "Their ships are shielded with advanced cloaking technology, so you'll need to disable their systems long enough for us to get in. Once you're aboard, I will guide you to the central core, where the Syrax leader is located. That's where we strike." David studied the plan carefully. It was risky, but it was the only option they had. They had no idea how many Syrax soldiers were aboard the mothership, but Ilakira assured them that the majority of their forces were focused on maintaining control over the galaxy's outer rim. Still, the Syrax were known for their ruthlessness. The closer they got to the heart of their ship, the more dangerous it would become. David turned to his team, giving them one last look of encouragement. "This is it. We go in, we do what we came here to do, and we get out. Stay sharp, stay together, and don't trust anyone but each other." "Understood." The soldiers nodded in unison. The fear in their eyes was obvious, but there was also determination. They had fought battles before, but this was different. They weren't just fighting for victory. They were fighting for survival. As the Apollo approached the Syrax mothership, Ilakira's plan unfolded. A small, heavily armored shuttle was launched from the Apollo, making its way toward the Syrax ship's outer defenses. The shuttle was equipped with cloaking technology of its own, designed to match the Syrax's advanced systems. It was their only chance to get close without being detected. Inside the shuttle, the team sat in tense silence. Ilakira was with them, her calm presence a stark contrast to the palpable tension in the air. David couldn't help but glance at her every now and then, trying to gauge her intentions. She had been helpful so far, but something about her still didn't sit right. He knew that even the slightest misstep could cost them everything. As the shuttle neared the Syrax mothership, the cloaking technology began to fail. The ship's exterior shimmered for a moment, then disappeared behind a wall of static. The team braced themselves for impact, but nothing happened. They had made it inside. "Now," Ilakira said, her voice cool and steady, "we move quickly. The Syrax will be monitoring their systems, but they won't expect you to come from the inside. You have a small window of time before they realize you're here." David nodded, signaling for the team to prepare. They had no time to waste. The shuttle touched down with a soft thud, and the team disembarked, making their way into the bowels of the Syrax ship. The corridors were dark and quiet, the air thick with the scent of unfamiliar technology. The Syrax mothership was an eerie place, its cold metal walls seeming to pulse with an unnatural energy. As they moved deeper into the ship, David felt a growing sense of dread. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, even though there was no sign of life. Ilakira led the way, her movements smooth and confident as she guided them through the maze-like interior. The deeper they went, the more dangerous it became. They passed through a series of heavily fortified doors. each one requiring a combination of codes and precise timing to bypass. With each successful step, David felt a little more confident that they could pull this off. But the further they went, the more they encountered signs of Sirac's presence. The ship was massive, with a labyrinth of corridors and rooms that seemed to stretch on forever. Every corner they turned, every door they opened, led them closer to the heart of the ship and to the Sirac's leader. As they reached the central core of the ship, the air grew colder and the hum of machinery became deafening. Ilakira signaled for them to stop. She turned to David, her eyes narrowing. "We're almost there," she said. "Once we breach the core, we'll have to act fast. The Sirac's leader will be there, waiting." David nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. This was it. They had come this far and there was no turning back. Suddenly, the silence of the ship was broken by a loud, screeching sound, like metal being torn apart. The ship shook and alarms began blaring. "It's begun," Ilakira muttered under her breath. "They know we're here." David's mind raced. The Siracs had detected them. Their cover was blown. "Move, move, move," he shouted to his team. "Get to the core, we don't have much time." The soldiers rushed forward, weapons raised, ready for whatever came next. The tension in the air was unbearable. David's mind was racing. What would they find inside the Sirac's leader's chamber? Would they be able to complete their mission, or would this be the end? They pushed through the final door, and what they found on the other side was beyond anything they had imagined. The Sirac's leader stood in front of them, an ancient being, towering and imposing, its body covered in black, hardened armor. Its eyes glowed with an eerie green light, and its voice echoed through the chamber. "You think you can defeat me?" the Sirac's leader hissed. "You're too late, the galaxy will burn and you will all perish." David took a deep breath. This was the moment of truth. Everything had led to this. The Sirac's leader loomed before them, towering and immovable, a shadow of ancient power. His armor gleamed in the dim light of the chamber, reflecting the greenish glow of his eyes, which burned with an intensity that sent a chill through David's soles. His voice rumbled like thunder, deep and menacing. "You are fools," the Sirac's leader growled, his voice echoing through the chamber. "You cannot defeat me. The Sirac's will consume this galaxy and you will be the first to fall." David's pulse quickened, his mind racing. There was no turning back now. They had come too far to fail. His heart pounded in his chest, but his voice remained calm as he addressed his team. "Stay focused. This is it. We finish what we started." The team tightened their grips on their weapons, ready for the fight ahead. But Ilakira stepped forward, her eyes locked onto the Sirac's leader, her posture unwavering. For a moment, she looked every bit the queen she once was, the ruler of an empire. But now, she was a woman who had nothing left to lose, and her voice was filled with quiet determination. "This is not your victory," Ilakira said, her voice cold as ice. "This galaxy is not for you to conquer. We will stop you." The Sirac's leader let out a cruel laugh, his dark figure casting an imposing shadow over the team. "You think you can stop me? You and your pathetic alliance of weaklings." He raised one massive arm, and the chamber seemed to tremble with the power he wielded. David clenched his fist around his weapon. "We're not leaving without stopping you." With a roar, the Sirac's leader charged, his enormous frame moving with terrifying speed. The ground shook as his heavy steps echoed through the chamber. David barely had time to react before the Sirac's leader swung his massive arm toward them, sending a shockwave of force that knocked several soldiers off their feet. "Get down!" David shouted, instinctively diving for cover as the Sirac's leader's arm struck the ground where they had been standing just moments before. The air was thick with the sound of crashing metal and the distant hum of the Sirac's mothership systems. David scrambled to his feet, scanning the battlefield. The Sirac's leader was a force of nature, his raw power unmatched. But David knew they had one advantage, the element of surprise. Ilakira had given them the means to reach the heart of the Sirac's ship, but now it was up to them to use it. "Form up," David ordered, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Stay in formation and hit him with everything we've got." The soldiers quickly regrouped, taking positions behind scattered debris. They fired their weapons in synchronized bursts, but the Syrax leader's thick armor absorbed their blasts without even flinching. David's frustration grew. They needed to find a weak spot, something that could bring him down. "Ilakira," David shouted, turning toward her. "What's his weakness?" Ilakira's eyes were narrowed in concentration, her mind working quickly. "The core," she said, pointing to a faint glow on the Syrax leader's chest. "The heart of his power is in that core. If you can disable it, he'll fall." David nodded, understanding the urgency. "Kara, take the left flank. The rest of you follow me. We go for the core." The team moved with precision, navigating the chamber with practiced movements. The Syrax leader's rage was palpable as he swung his enormous fists, each blow a shockwave that threatened to crush anything in its path. But David and his team were quick, dodging and weaving around him, looking for an opening. "Now!" David shouted as he spotted a momentary gap in the Syrax leader's defenses. With everything he had, he sprinted toward the core, his weapon aimed at the glowing spot on the leader's chest. The other soldiers followed, firing their weapons to keep the Syrax leader distracted. David reached the core and took aim. With a single, precise shot, he fired into the glowing spot, the energy from his weapon colliding with the Syrax leader's power source. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a deafening roar, the Syrax leader staggered back, his body convulsing as the energy from the core began to destabilize. "No!" the Syrax leader bellowed, his voice filled with fury. "This cannot be." David took a step back, watching as the Syrax leader's once immense power began to wane. The core on his chest flickered, sending out waves of energy that made the air crackle with static. The Syrax leader's movement slowed, his strength diminishing. "We've got him," David said, his voice full of resolve. "Finish him off." The team opened fire again, this time with every weapon they had. The Syrax leader's once impenetrable armor began to crack and crumble under the onslaught, his monstrous form finally giving way to the combined firepower of the team. With one final, guttural roar, the Syrax leader collapsed to the ground, his body falling into a heap as the light in his eyes faded. The chamber grew silent, the echo of his fall reverberating through the walls of the ship. David exhaled, his body tense from the adrenaline of the battle. It was over. The greatest threat they had ever faced had been defeated, but the victory felt hollow. They had lost so much along the way, and the cost of this war was immeasurable. Ilakira stood near the fallen Syrax leader, her gaze distant. "This is only the beginning," she said quietly. "The Syrax horde is vast and they will come for you again. But for now, you've won. You've defied fate." David turned toward her, his expression hardening. "We've won today, but we're not done. The Federation will rebuild and will be ready for whatever comes next." Ilakira nodded. "I will help you. The Zaltar owe you that much." David glanced at his team, who were regrouping and tending to their wounded. They had done it. Against all odds, they had stopped the Syrax leader and saved the galaxy from the impending destruction. But the galaxy was not out of danger yet. The Syrax horde was still out there, waiting for the right moment to strike again. And David knew that it was only a matter of time before the war would resume, bigger, more brutal, and more dangerous than ever before. He turned to Ilakira one last time. "Thank you, Ilakira, for your help, but this alliance, it's temporary. Once we're done with the Syrax, you'll have to answer for the things you've done." Ilakira's eyes darkened, but she didn't argue. She had betrayed her own people and she knew it. But now, for the first time in a long time, she had something to fight for, something worth protecting. "Understood," she said quietly. "I will face whatever comes, as will you." As the team made their way back to the Apollo, David couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The Syrax leader was dead, but the war was far from over. Humanity had survived this battle, but there would be many more to come. For now, they had won. But David knew that the true test of humanity's strength was yet to come, and when that time arrived, they would be ready. The alien queen faced certain death, until one human chose to defy fate, HFY Sci-Fi.